This is a demonstration that will show you how to cover a hem edge. So after you fold up your sample, cover a hem edge using bias tape. Typically, you will use bias tape when you have a curved hemline that you're trying to cover. We're not covering the actual the hem that we turn up. We are covering this raw edge that will face inward towards the top of the garment from the hem edge. So what I first want to show you, and hopefully you have this marking on here, it's a 1-inch hemline from the bottom. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is I would go ahead and just pin that into place along the bottom edge. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn up this curved line, and I'm not going to be overly concerned with how it's resting along the top. What I'm concerned with right now is how it's resting along the bottom. And this is a tip that that I learned for sewing curved hems and just making them look sharp and not pulling awkwardly. So what we're going to do is we're not pressing this right now. We're just folding up that edge, putting some pins on the bottom, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just do a quick base stitch right along that edge. So do like an edge stitch, but it's meant to just kind of hold things in place so that we won't have our hemline move around while we are finishing the top edge there. So just needed to readjust my fold point here. And then we're going to then just stitch right along this folded edge using a basting stitch. So go ahead and make sure that you have your basting stitch set to 4. And I'm just going to be stitching about 1/8 of an inch away from that folded hemline. And don't do any back stitching on this because we're going to remove it eventually. So just go slow and make sure that as you curve around those edges that you you know, adjust your presser foot as you might need to keep everything flat. And if you want to go a little bit closer, that'll probably just also help to hold everything in place. And again, this is just a basting stitch that we will take out here in a few minutes. So it's just meant to hold that that hemline and set that hemline without any weird creases or crunchies or anything like that. So almost done here. Alright, and again, we're not going to be doing any back stitching, and I'm just going to raise up my needle and pull out those threads. So as you can see, like along this edge, I think I have a little bit of a gather in there, but I can work that out with my fingernail. So from the front side, that curve is that hem is nice and flat. Now what we need to do is we need to come back and cover this edge that we have here, the hem, with some bias tape. Now what we first want to do is, my tape was folded back inward, and I have extra wide double fold tape, so I'm probably going to be trimming off quite a bit of this, but we want to have a half-inch distance to use here. So what you're going to then do is kind of open up your fabric, and we're just going to, and I would start by letting this extend a little bit beyond the edge of your fabric for your hem, the edge of your hemline, and then you're just going to place some pins in right along that raw edge of your hem, matching up your raw edges using your bias tape. And since this is a half-inch bias tape, we're going to be stitching at a 1/2 inch. So just to be aware that we will have some different stitches, and you know, that's all dependent upon you know, what materials you use or what type of hem cover or hem finish that you use. So this is just one example of how you can finish an edge. There's lots of different ways to do it, and your book has a ton. So while you're working on, you know, kind of making some decisions for your projects, or even when you get to that point, know that there's, you know, more than one way to skin a cat. So, you know, check out your book and see what is right for your end purpose. Alright, and it looks like I probably have, when I cut mine I didn't really measure to see how long that bias tape was going to extend. I just wanted to make sure that I at least got it covered. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this raw edge here, and I'm going to stitch that at 1/2 inch. And in case it depends on what your sewing machine reads, but it might read 4/8. And make sure that you shorten up your stitch length. Mine was pretty close there. Go back to 2 1/4, 2 1/2. And then we're just going to, again, stitch along this edge right at 1/2 inch. All the way down, connecting this bias tape. And we are going around that curve, so, you know, just gently adjust your fabric as your feed dogs move everything along. Alright, and then do some back stitching at the end of that. And then raise up your presser foot and trim those thread tails. Alright, so just to give you a quick shot of how things are looking so far. I don't know if I can get that out of the way. This is what we've done. We did that top stitch, and then we just sewed our bias tape to the raw edge of that, the turned up part of that hem, okay? And we stitched that all the way around the edge here. Now what your book suggests that you do is you go ahead and we trim this up fairly narrow, because we're going to, just so that it's out of the way. So I'm going to just trim off my excess bias tape here, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to trim these seam allowances. But I'm going to trim fairly close. I'm going to take it down to about 1/8 of an inch. Just trimming all along here. Alright. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to turn, we're going to want to press this in place here, and then this will get turned to the inside. And what we might have to do is we might have to take out that basting stitch, we'll see. Because mine is fairly, I think because mine is that double fold, that it's a little excess in there. But what you're going to want to do is, and I'm going to go over and take this time to iron also, is you want to open up your bias tape and then make sure that you press your seam allowances towards the bias tape and then flip that around so that you have a solid seam there that'll lay flat. Okay, and then we'll start up the video as soon as I get back from the ironing board.